Welcome to My Tech Mavericks. I'm John Coogan, and today we've got Jared Jennings joining us as a guest. So Jared went from working in a Macy stockroom at $14 an hour to founding Phantom Brands, where he's now building elite brands for NBA stars, musicians, and entrepreneurs, and everyone in between. But for what his story, which we'll get to hear shortly, his journey wasn't easy. From corporate frustration to his first business struggles, he's faced it all and is here to give some great insights in business, entrepreneurship, and building brands. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, John. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. I think what I'd like to do is just start the episode and get you to tell us a little bit about what you do now, because I know you've had a lot of experience building brands, but you're also moving into coaching. So what's your focus now?
Yeah, so I have two active businesses. I have Phantom Brands, and what Phantom does is we have a done-for-you side of our business, which creates full-on brands for, like you said, public figures, NBA, athletes, etc. They'll come to us and say, hey, we want a clothing brand or an e-com brand, and we build it from A to Z. So initial designs, we oversee production, we'll create the content for them, we'll do the websites, we'll do everything for them. That's our done-for-you service.
Yeah.
The other side of Phantom is we work with existing e-commerce brands. So if an e-com brand comes to us and wants to grow, or their email struggling, or their website, we'll take a very holistic approach. We'll look at really the foundation of the brand, and we'll go from there, just helping them build as profitably as possible. That's our goal with the e-com brand. So that's the Phantom side, very heavy DTC e-com. And on the other side of what I do is also coaching. So I work with a lot of aspiring or current entrepreneurs that want to take the leap. They want to invest in themselves. They want to learn and get that shortcut from somebody that's done e-com and a service-based business, and also work with them on mindset and personal development, because as I'm sure you know, that's a really big part of owning a business, being an entrepreneur, is the inner game. So working on both those sides with them is what my coaching does, and those are the two businesses I run right now.
Fantastic. I know there's a few things that I want to tease out you and questions I want to get some answers from you. But I think what would really help is for me and for listeners to understand how you got to where you are now. Because I know I did mention in the intro you started at Macy's, $14 an hour in the stockroom, but how did that journey look for you?
Yeah, so I developed a thyroid disorder in high school, and it went undiagnosed for many years. And the reason I mentioned that health complication is because prior to that, I had full plans of going professional athlete with baseball. That was like my dream, 100% in. And when this developed over the years, and I finally got diagnosed and treated, I was 17. I was, kind of leaving high school at the time. So the dream of baseball, because of how it affected my performance, really went away. I would have had to go on D2, and I didn't want to do that. So that caused me to look into business and choose a business route. And when I was looking at my future, I said, sales makes a lot of sense for me, mainly because I didn't know any other way to make money, but I've always kind of had the ability to communicate. So I said, well, you can make a good bit of money in sales. I'm going to go into sales. And so I went to business school, and during business school is when I went to Macy's, and then Ted Baker, and then Nordstrom. I wanted to get in a client-facing role so that when I left, I could get a decent sales job. That was the whole goal.
Yeah.
When I graduated, that is when I went the corporate sales route. Massive inflection points, finding out about politics, bureaucracy, COVID hit. A lot of things happened to where I really realized I don't want to be in this environment. I want to own my own business. And when that inflection point happened, I considered long and hard about what I wanted to do, because I wanted obviously to make money, but I wanted it to be something that I was drawn to, that I naturally had an interest of. And I came on the idea of creating a clothing brand that combined my passion for spirituality and streetwear. I've always loved designing and dressing cool. I was designing my own baseball cleats when I was like 5 on the Nike ID shop thing. So I've always been just naturally intrigued by clothing. And so I learned everything from scratch. Obviously, I came from a sales background. I didn't have any experience or connections. So I took courses online, and I just YouTube videos and trying to learn as much as I can about building a clothing brand. So I launched my first brand in February of 2022. That was my own brand. And obviously, first year, we can talk about all the ups and downs and all the things I went through. But how it transitioned into Phantom, which is what I'm doing now, is because it was a quote unquote status driven streetwear brand, a lot of DJs, athletes, etc., liked the brand. So I built those relationships by sending them clothes, and they wore it. And when I created my done for you service, they were the first people I reached out to because they knew the quality of the brand I could make. They knew the designs I could do. They knew the content I made, and I said, hey, this is a new, service I'm offering. It's a done for you build. We'll essentially create you the brand we did, but for your own style, your own inspiration. And the best part to them is they don't have to market because they already have fans, right? So they save a lot of money in acquiring customers because they already have that built-in audience. And so that's been the journey to now up to Phantom. And then when I created my personal brand, then I got into coaching.
Okay, fantastic. There's a few bits I want to touch on, and something I hadn't really realised was about some of the health difficulties that you'd had. How did that affect you from having this dream of wanting to go into baseball and then having a realisation that actually isn't going to play out?
It was a very difficult period. I would say that period of my life was probably the hardest period I've been through up to this point, because I went into high school as a nationally ranked player. I was very good. And I was on varsity freshman year, and I don't know if you know anything about thyroid disease, but it gradually came on, and the symptoms are brain fog, fatigue, weight gain, like hormonal levels. You're basically a walking zombie if you have hypothyroidism. Right. And I just kept persisting through it, even though I felt awful. And, coupled with the pressure of being on varsity and the expectations of me coming into high school and all of these things, it was a very difficult time. But what I will say is there's a couple things that I have gained from it that I'll take with me forever. And one of them is the mental toughness that it took to basically live like a zombie for 3 years with pressure and continue to show up. I still practiced every day. I forced myself to. I slept through classes because I was so tired and had so much brain fog, but I still showed up every single day. Another thing that it really showed me is I've since cured my thyroid disease holistically. And I did that through supplements, nutrition. And what that showed me is how important your physiology is for achieving anything you want in your life, right? When I lost a ton of weight. That's another story for another time. I lost a ton of weight. I got healthy. That is genuinely when I really made the pivot into entrepreneurship, because I had much more energy, right? And when you have more energy, when you feel physically better, you're able to take more risks. You're able to make more decisions. And so, as awful as it was, there's definitely things I've taken from it to this point.
Yeah, I can see parallels between having that pivot from professional sportsmanship to entrepreneurship. So how a lot of people who are listening are going to feel stuck in jobs that aren't fulfilling, they're not where they want to be. So how do you use that frustration to prepare yourself into entrepreneurship or into a new direction?
I would say you have to use the pain, right? I made the decision to become an entrepreneur because I was in so much discomfort and pain with my corporate role. If it was a cozy role, if I was comfortable, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. People move away from pain. It's the best motivator, right? And if you can cultivate that in a way that forces you to take action by, for example, reminding yourself of how life could look like if you don't change, right? So you're consciously forcing yourself to move away from pain. It's going to push you to do the things you want to do. But if you're too comfortable, nothing is going to change.
Yeah, 100%. And just kind of similar theme, really, but you're working in these, I think it was Nordstrom, you mentioned working at Macy's. What are some of those key lessons you've taken away from those roles that you continued into what you're doing now?
Well, when it comes to Macy's, I would say get some damn skills so you're not in the back room unboxing and boxing clothes. I would say get some damn skills because you're basically useless when you're in that role and you get treated as such, right? So acquire more skills. Definitely acquire more skills. At Nordstrom, we were hustling. It was all commission, right? And so we were hustling. I was working part-time, getting my degree, but I was still very competitive. I wanted to make money and I wanted to hustle. And it also taught me a lot about people, because not only the people that I worked with in that competitive atmosphere, but also the people that I sold to. And it was sales 101, right? Predict their needs, go above and beyond, how important service is, how important the soft skills are in business. I would say the way you communicate with somebody and the way you treat somebody is almost more important than what you're selling, because human beings are human beings at the end of the day. And we really need, it's their basic human needs, feeling that feeling of respect, or that feeling of somebody cares about you, right? As cliche as it may sound, it's very important. Very important. So those are some of the things I've taken from those retail roles.
And did you have that entrepreneurial drive while you were at Macy's?
No, I did not.
Nice.
I did not. I was planning on using Macy's as a stepping stone to get to my Nordstrom's role that I wanted in college. But my perspective was very small, right? I was really only thinking like a year or two out. I was really only thinking, well, I'm going to use Nordstrom for like a corporate role. But that was like the limit on my perspective, and I didn't really dream too big, which is a mistake.
So when and how did you build that confidence and self-belief that you could actually go and build your own empire?
I don't know if I ever really felt 100% confident, right? It was one of those things where I feel that we're limited to only a couple emotions at a time, let's just say. Right? Like if you're feeling angry, it's going to be impossible to also feel excited and joyful and relaxed, right? Like emotions really can overtake you. You can't really feel too many emotions at one time. And when I was building my first brand, really the only emotion I felt was like urgency and discomfort. Like that is all that superseded and overdrive every doubt, every concern about if I could do this. Like that is the only thing that really carried me. So it's an interesting question because I used different emotions. I didn't necessarily use, I believe in myself so much. It was more like, I have to do this. At all costs, I'm going to figure it out. That was the only thing that consumed me.
So you've mentioned a couple of times there's some challenges in those first years. So what were some of those challenges that you were facing the first year of business?
Well, one of the first ones off the bat was within 3 weeks of launching my brand, I was wiped off the internet. And I was wiped off the internet because I hired somebody from Fiverr to go into my Facebook ad account because I didn't understand ads yet, but I wanted to grow fast. I wasn't patient. So I hired somebody to go in and fix some things around and look at things. And they had hacked my personal Facebook. They were posting inappropriate things. And so Meta banned my personal account and all my business with it, right? So I was off Facebook, I was off Instagram. I had no online presence, sitting on inventory 3 weeks after launch. Wow. That's not very fun. Right, yeah. And especially when it's something where, quote unquote, I had no, I didn't do this, right? So that's not very fun. And that's definitely, there were definitely a lot of moments like that where there's a lot of uncontrollables that are going to arise when you start a business, right? You think you're completely in control of every external environmental variable, but you're really not. And there's always going to be things that are going to come up.
Yeah, 100%. And I completely resonate. I think before we got recording, I said about a business that I was involved with had COVID, and just production times went from 3 months to a year in some cases. It's like just trying to manage just the actual processes of getting stock to customers. And that's completely flipped upside down. So yeah, there's always going to be challenges that you'd never expect or never foresee. So when you were faced with that, how did you overcome that?
The only thing I told myself was that I can only lose if I quit. I just kept going. I just found a way every day to find a way to keep going. There were a couple other quotes as well, like "no pressure, no diamonds." That was another one that I would genuinely say these quotes in my mind to myself every single day. Because if I didn't control my thoughts and I let them wander, I probably would have quit. I mean, things can get dark at certain times, and I made a conscious decision and choice to program my mind and tell myself the things that I needed to hear to keep going. That was it. That was really it.
And what was the support around like you? So did you have much support?
My family's very supportive. My family is supportive. There was definitely a period of time before I got sales going where they were more skeptical, right? Yeah. They're skeptical. They're concerned. They're worried. My grandmother is very risk adverse, and she was like clinging to me, like, don't lose all this money, Yeah. But then when they see sales coming in, they're more at peace, and they're like, okay, you can do this. So I had my family pretty early on when I got sales going. It was an interesting period with my friends because I detached from a lot of them because they weren't aligned with the entrepreneurship journey that I wanted to go through. They weren't on the same path. And so it was a bit of a period of isolation where I was more so just kind of on my own, consuming content, the content that I wanted to be, influenced by, and leaning on my family. So I think that's a really good piece to touch on for anybody that wants to start a business and is trying to gain more support. You need to be able to just jump without it, because at the end of the day, until you do it, most people are not going to believe in you. Like it's just a harsh reality. Most people are very risk adverse. Most people really just don't want you to change. They want you to stay comfortable. And if you succeed, they're going to feel, they're going to cope about themselves because they've never taken action, and all these insecurities are going to flare up. What I recommend is be consumed by content of people that have done it before and just blaze your own path and just go.
But yeah, it's such an important step. Like I say, just making sure you're surrounded by the right people at the right time. But it's not always that easy to do. Is that something where you had conversations with people? Did you just remove yourself from particular circles? What did that look like?
I just slowly removed myself, got busier and busier. I'm still acquaintances to all those people to this day. No bridges burned. But when it came to speaking with them all the time and seeing them often, I recognized that this did not align with where I wanted to go. And so I just simply removed myself. I worked more. I talked to them a little bit less. And I was more conscious of who I was surrounding and who I was being influenced by in my life.
So did you take positive action to make sure you were surrounded by the type of people that you wanted to be surrounded by?
I should have done a better job of that, which I'm doing now. But I basically became a hermit. I basically just went isolation period. I networked a little bit with people that I wanted to meet in the industry, but a lot of the time was spent in isolation, just working on my skills and trying to be the best founder that I could possibly be. But I will say that it is in your best interest to network and meet other people that are like you, because being an entrepreneur, especially working out of your house or working remotely, can be very isolating. And that's something that I've made a very conscious decision of recently, is connecting with more people, not only remotely, but also in real life, because I'm near a big city, I'm near LA, that are also aligned with the path that I'm on, because we all need human connection, right? Like nobody can just sit in their room all day, every day and be happy and fulfilled. So it is definitely an integral part of the human existence, whether you're building a business or not.
Yeah, and I think one of the pieces of advice I've heard recently, actually, from another guest on the podcast, was about having connections with people all around the world, so in different time zones. Just you may have experienced it, but being awake at 2 a.m, having a business problem, ruminating on it, and it's nice being able to be like, I've got somebody across the pond, I give them a call, I know they're going to be up. So just trying to diversify your network. And I think that's particularly interesting in the field that you're in, because you are doing it for celebrities and for top level people. So how do you start networking with that type of person?
So in my case, all of my networking came from my brand. And in my case, I had a product that they liked. And so the way I was able to get into these circles was I basically gave quote unquote free value. I gave my product to these individuals with nothing in return, just out of courtesy. A lot of them, not all, but a lot of them wore it because they liked the product and they appreciated the good gesture, right? Of me, quote unquote, giving value. That's how I'm going to word it to make it applicable to the audience. I gave value of something they genuinely cared about and wanted with nothing in return. And that was my foot in the door. And that was how I was able to cultivate relationships in circles where I normally never would have been able to, right? I was able to make those leaps because I was willing to see long-term and say, well, if I give free value now, it's going to pay off.
Yeah, and it seems like it certainly did. So looking back on that period, the early days, is there one thing that you wish you had known then that you know now?
I wish I would have invested in myself earlier. It took me, I want to say 6 months to invest in my first course, my first mentorship. I was unaware that programs and products like that existed where I could literally just learn from somebody that's already done it. That is the biggest cheat code alive. And it took me way too long to figure that out, because you can spend your time, I say this all the time, but there's consequences of the actions you take beyond what you can perceive, right? So let's say there's option A, figuring it out on your own. Option B, investing in yourself. Option A is going to take you longer, right? You're going to quote unquote save your money. But beyond it taking longer, you're also going to be spiraling in an emotional whirlpool of frustration, right? It's going to garner negative emotion and affect you because it's taking you longer to figure out. It's going to be more frustrating, right? So not only are you going to take more time, but it's also going to take a toll on you mentally and spiritually, right? Option B, where you invest in yourself, you feel more empowered and more inspired because you have the answers, right? And so not only are you saving time, but you're also causing an upward spiral of your like emotional state, your mental state. It's beyond comprehension how beneficial it is to invest in yourself because of so many ramifications that people don't really consider.
Yeah, and as you kind of touched on it there, once you've done something, you know how to do it. So, and I think that's similar with companies as well. Once you've set one company up, you know registration, the tax details, employment practices, and actually it's not necessarily cookie cutter for the next one, but you've certainly been there, understand how it works, and that takes away 50% of the work straight off the bat. So in terms of when you learn how important mentors can be for you, when did that realization come for you?
It was about 6 months into when I launched my first brand, and I bought a group course. Essentially, there was a course and then a group program, so like weekly Q&As.
Yeah,
and it was just such an eye opener. I didn't recognize and I couldn't realize how much I didn't know. And when I got into this program and I was learning about Facebook ads, right, the thing that burned me in the past, and I was learning about other things of that nature. And by the way, that was the only reason I joined the program, is because I'd been burned with multiple agencies. And I said, I need to figure out how to run my own ads because I'm getting burned. I don't even know what to look for. So I sought it out, right? Through pain, you take action. Yeah. So I was in pain, I took action. And it was an eye opener. It was just an absolute eye opener to the level of depth and education and knowledge that you don't have, right? And everybody at any level, like I still have mentors, I'm still in masterminds and programs. At any level, there's always more to know. There's always a layer deeper that you can take something. And I would say it's just an eye-opening experience. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, I know one of the things you're very much acute to as well is manifestation. So what part does manifestation play in your day-to-day life?
It's life itself, because your thoughts really do shape your reality, whether we know it or not, or whether we're aware of it or not. That is the reality. And so every single day, I'm very mindful. What am I consuming? How am I programming myself? What thoughts am I having? How am I perceiving things? What's my state like? How am I reacting to things? Because it's that important, right? If I wake up every single day and I say it's going to be a awful day and all these bad things might happen and I'm living in that state, life's going to reflect it very quickly, and vice versa, right? So if I am cognizant and aware of these things, I have the ability to really create a reality that I really love, because we do have that power as human beings. And I think if you tap into it, the limits are endless.
And so is that something you do daily, or what's that actually look like for you? What tangible things do you do to use manifestation?
Yeah, there's a couple things I do. I meditate every single morning with visualization. That calms my mind, that gets me in a great state. I listen to audiobooks and seminars when I'm driving around that also focus on important key aspects of how to be your best self and how to do these things that are very empowering. I also do exercises with journaling and writing things down and different sorts of things, so that I'm consciously just pounding my mind with the things I want to hear. Because if we don't program ourselves, we're getting programmed. It's the nature of the beast. And so I want to get ahead of it. I want to do exercises every single day. I want to leave no room for error when it comes to how my brain and how my subconscious is being programmed.
So can you think of a time when manifestation's actually had an effect that you can demonstrate? how it's actually impacted in your life. Is there a particular struggle that you've overcame, which you've been able to overcome due to that type of mindset?
Yeah, I would say the most prolific transformation that I realized that I saw from doing inner work is when I went from 15K to 98K in 2 months, in 1 month. And during that time, I entrenched myself in living and embodying everything I wanted from an abundant state. I went so deep. I went into my limiting beliefs. I went into my subconscious. I was entrenched. And in 60 days, I 5x my monthly income, which was a goal of mine. So that's why I'm attesting it to the manifesting, because I was always very gung-ho on 100K month. Very, very gung-ho. And that was something that was like bullseye in my view. And it happened, quote unquote, miraculously to the outside world. But to me, it was no surprise because I was putting in this level of work and I've seen it transform in real time.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great takeaway. And I think one of the things I try to focus on is, certainly if I have struggles, I'm worried about overcoming something or doing something that's not familiar to me, is what would the person I want to be do? And just focus on what would that person do, not what I am as me, insecure, not very confident, not what would I do, but what would the person I want to be do? And then just do it. Just taking action. So yeah, no, I completely resonate with what you just said.
Awesome.
So how do you stay mentally and emotionally balanced when there are those highs and lows as well? Because you get challenges, like I understand there's a certain amount of manifestation. You can try and be positive, but there's got to be times when that's difficult to do and things do beat you down. So in those types of circumstances, how do you get past that?
So it's a compounding effect with this, right? You don't do a meditation and you're suddenly a king manifester and you never get effective. It needs to be very consistent work. And the more consistent you are, the more compounding you are, the easier it is to swim past things that are going to arise in life. I also place a very high priority on my physical state and what I eat and how I work out. Because, again, back to physiology, how you physically feel is really, really aligned with your mind, right? So if I am sick and tired and something bad happens, I am going to react more negatively because of the state I'm in than if I slept fantastically and I'm eating well and I'm working out. It's easier to overcome difficulties when you're physically primed, right? And then you can connect with your mind and move over those things easily. I also like to remind myself that no matter what happens, we need to maintain enthusiasm, right? It's completely up to me if I want to react negatively to a negative circumstance. It's a choice. It really is, right? And just being aware of that and cognizant will help you overcome it and make better decisions because you don't fall into the trap of letting it affect you as deeply as it once would.
Yes. I was, again, reading something recently, and it's around metacognition and the ability to have thoughts about your thoughts. And it's quite easy
to higher consciousness.
Yeah, so it's easy to fall into the trap of I feel angry, and that just being your state of mind. But actually, you can think about why you're feeling angry. What can you do about it? And actually change how you're responding to it. Because you don't have to respond to the feeling, and you don't have to listen to your thoughts. You can analyze it and take a change.
Yeah, so it's essentially having a higher consciousness above your emotion. A really good book on this is Outwitting the Devil. I think it's by Robert Greene. But that is an issue with a lot of people, is they give too much power to emotion, right? If somebody feels fearful, it consumes them. They are at mercy of the fear. When in reality, we can look at fear as like this little entity that we're just kind of playing with. It's just kind of there, right? And when you can have that this higher perspective, you can manipulate any emotion you want.
Yeah. That's what I'd like to ask you about. And it's, again, people who are looking to make changes or wanting to start businesses. So if you were going to start today with the limited funds, limited experience and a few connections, how would you approach building a brand?
A clothing brand or any personal brand? Or
we'll go up to, it can vary depending on what the commodity is, but I know you've got obviously a lot of experience with clothing brands. So let's say somebody wants to start a clothing brand, haven't got many connections, haven't got much money to invest in the beginnings. What approach would you take?
Yeah, so there there's a couple of different ways you can go about it. If you're really low in starting capital, you can do a drop shipping method. And so what you'll do is you will set up a Shopify store. You'll need to learn your way around Shopify. You'll need to kind of educate yourself on creating a website. You'll integrate with a company depending on where you are in the world. But what we use is Printful. So they're a print-on-demand dropship company. So it takes a lot of the fulfillment. It takes a lot of the upfront expenses of buying inventory off your hands. Now, obviously, the quality is going to be lower, right? But if you want to start with a low budget, there's no reason not to start because you have this option, right? So you can use this option. You can order samples. You can create your own content, right? Create a lot of short forms, create some product stills, create some imagery of your friends in it for the website, build up your social platform, create some content, and you can get affiliates to give them a percentage on TikTok. You can just post organic short form to drive the traffic. And relatively, all of those things are pretty much free. Shopify, obviously, there's a monthly fee. You'll have to order the samples, but you could get a brand launched and off the ground. Granted, it's a drop shipping brand, but it's still a brand for a couple $100. So that is probably the cheapest way to go about it, but it's still a viable way to get a brand off the ground.
And in terms of generating that interest initially, what would be the first steps that you would take? I know you've mentioned essentially affiliate marketing and having influence, etc. But what other methods would you focus on?
With no budget, you better be good at organic. So if they don't have the skill set of creating short form content, they need to learn it. They need to learn Premiere Pro. They need to learn how to edit. They need to learn and study other brands' content that performed well and converted well. And they need to recreate it as many times as it takes, right? Because if we're low budget, our greatest ally is going to be our time. And with our time, we need to allocate that towards things that are going to drive growth that don't require any money, right? Which essentially is going to be content and giving influencers commission as an affiliate, right? So getting those, building the social organically is how you're going to get off the ground if you're bootstrapping. There's really no other way.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned about drop shipping, but if people do want to end up with their own private labels, it's definitely a testing ground, and it is an easy, low barrier to entry way of doing it. So yeah, I think that's a very good starting point. So I know you've obviously built brands for lots of these NBA players and entrepreneurs, etc. And you've started to move slightly different direction. Well, I say slightly different. It's quite different in terms of coaching. So what is it that made you want to go from building brands to coaching other people?
So I started my personal brand journey this summer. June, July, I really started to post some content and say, I feel inclined to create a personal brand. I don't know why I felt inclined. I just felt inclined. Yeah. And it just an intuition thing. So I started creating content on X. I started posting about the things I've done, the things I've learned, yada, 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 telling my story. And I started getting DMs of people reaching out to me wanting to work with me. And I basically created my coaching offer out of demand because people wanted to work with me. And I said, oh, okay, this is interesting. I haven't considered this, but I created an offer around what they were looking for. And we were meeting once a week. And that's where coaching started. And once I started coaching, I really came to realize how much I loved coaching because this was, again, new territory to me, but I wanted to do it to help people. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed creating change and inspiring people and giving people my knowledge and seeing them build brands or their agencies. It's really, really cool and empowering. So it was created basically out of demand, but then I fell in love with it, and now we're here.
Yeah, and for listeners interested in sharing their expertise, how could they start small in coaching as well, while still balancing the main business? Because as you mentioned, there's lots of people with lots of knowledge and experiences that other people can learn from. So what's a way for people to start sharing their own experiences on a small scale?
Yeah, I would say start creating content. Depending on your demographic, I would focus on like X or Instagram, but it really depends on what you're good at, right? I lean short form content because I am good at speaking, right? If you're maybe not the best speaker, go X, go LinkedIn where you can write, and that could be your content. So I would lean into your strengths and start allocating an hour or two a day for content, and that's going to build over time. Now, if you can outsource and delegate other tasks in maybe your other business, etc., and get a setter, there's a whole structure to that as well, but that will help you juggle two businesses. But when you're starting, tell your story, talk about what you've been through, right? and just be vulnerable and authentic with the things you've done in a way that helps other people and gives value.
In terms of your own coaching, is there a particular aspect that you particularly enjoy focusing on?
We focus mainly on business and personal development. So that's going to be business strategies, or it's going to be mindset and destroying limiting beliefs. I enjoy both. I think the mindset aspect creates more of a breakthrough per se, because if I or anybody else told somebody exactly what to do in their business, but they have a bunch of limiting beliefs and they don't do it, it's useless information, right? It's like an engine with no gas in the car. And the mindset and the internal beliefs is the fuel. It is the gas and what drives people. So when I go through meditations with people, or when I do exercises with people, and I really drill down the mindset aspect and have them leaving the call, on cloud nine, ready to run through a wall for their business and for their life, that creates a lot of change. So I really do love that aspect. I would say I lean that way a little bit over the business side.
And in terms of balancing the two areas, so if you've got Phantom Brands, you're doing your coaching, how do you find the right balance between the two and still maintain your personal life?
I have great people that work for me that handle a lot of the load when it comes to top of funnel and bottom of funnel as well. So that helps me a lot. I would not be able to do it without the people that work for me that make this all possible. So they're very helpful. I also am very intentional about, like I said, right, making time for things outside of work and making sure we're not going through extended periods of isolation and making sure we're not mentally burnt out. So I genuinely will put time in my calendar to see my friends, and I live by my calendar. Like I'll put it in my calendar, like see so-and-so, make plans with so-and-so, so that I maintain the persistence to not burn out.
But no, that's great. Thank you very much. I think there's just a couple of tips or questions I want to go through, which is around mindset and just some of the practices that you have towards the end. But if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way of doing it? If they want to see what you're up to, what you're personally around, you said you're building your personal brand and your business, where's the best places to find you?
I'm Jared Jennings on all platforms. So my coaching website is jaredjennings.com, Instagram, Jared Jennings @JF5, X, Jared Jennings, YouTube, Jared Jennings, LinkedIn, Jared Jennings. And then my e-com side of things, my e-com company is called Phantom Brands. So phantom-brands.com.
Okay. And just to touch on the Phantom Brands as well, I know you've mentioned that you do everything from beginning, a done for you program. In terms of customizations and materials and all that side of it, how much input can people have, and how customizable is the product that you deliver?
It's extremely. I mean, this is going to be their brand, right? We're just the operations behind the scenes. So we deep dive. They have unlimited revisions. It's a very niche and boutique service. This is not like, let's just crank out some designs for this guy. We go really in depth. I've flown around the country meeting with my clients, showing them samples. There's unlimited revisions. It is everything to a T, exactly what they want. We deliver it for them.
And in terms of the scope of Phantom Brands, is that worldwide at the moment, or is that just limited to United States? What areas do you operate?
At this moment, we're only domestic, but we have the capabilities for international markets, international players, or public figures. But at the moment, we're only domestic.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. So yeah, I'll put all the links in the descriptions, in the show notes anyway, so everyone's going to be able to find you. It's click on your name and go straight to your pages. So that'll all be in the show notes if anyone wants to use those. And like I said, we'll come to a quick fire round towards the end of the interview. And you've mentioned a couple of books that you've read, but what's one book that's had the biggest influence on you?
I got a bunch of books over here. I'm looking. Think and Grow Rich is a classic. I also really like Tony Robbins' books a lot because they teach you how to manipulate your internal state, which is powerful, right? Because again, we're talking about state. We're talking about we need to be primed to take action. So Tony Robbins' books, Patrick Bet-David's books, Think and Grow Rich, those are fantastic.
Yeah, and you're still reading on a regular basis? Do you still what's your preferred way of consuming content?
I listen to a lot of audiobooks just because of the time aspect. I can be doing other things and listen. But reading is really how I absorb the best, to be honest. Even though it takes a longer time, I absorb so much actually reading words than listening.
Yeah. And is there one big lesson in life or business that you wish you'd learned sooner?
Invest in yourself. There's always things you don't know. Invest in yourself. No matter how optimistic you may be, no matter how much belief you may have, you're never too big to learn from somebody else that's already done it.
Yeah, fantastic. Lifelong learning. Yeah, never stop learning.
Never.
And if you could add one person to a Mindset Mavericks Hall of Fame, who would it be and why?
Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Absolute pioneer when it comes to NLP, when it comes to creating radical, lifelong change in minutes. His work is, I think, sensational. I think, sadly, a lot of it has gotten kind of watered down over the years, but the original Tony was a genius. A genius.
Yeah, that's a great choice. And I've got one final question for you, and it's we've discussed a lot of different topics during this interview, but if there's one thing listeners should take away from our conversation today, what do you think that should be?
Use your pain for your benefit. Take action, take the leap, and invest in yourself, because I fear the regret of not taking action. I really do. I think not unleashing my potential, playing it safe, and not taking action on my ideas is something that I think would haunt me for the rest of my life. And I think it should haunt other people more. And if you're comfortable, you need to use your pain to take action, because life is just going to fly right by. And if nothing changes in your life, nothing is going to change at all.
And that's great. Great time to end it. Yeah, really appreciate you coming on. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me.